So without any further delay, because we got a lot of content to get through, because you guys are here to learn about patient retention. So with me is the king of patient retention, Dr. Miles Bodzin. Take it away.
Thanks, Holly. I don't particularly care for that term king, but whatever. If you want to use that, that's fine. I won't stop you there. So welcome, everybody. We're looking forward to sharing with you today. We're going to spend the next good 45 minutes or so, maybe up to maybe a little longer, together going through the 4 secrets of patient retention. And with no further ado, let's just get right into the material. I see plenty of people joining in as you're doing this. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. I am going to use some slides today and to get our message across. So let's say slideshow. Here we go. All right. The whole topic today are the 4 secrets to patient retention. And we're going to share them with you. And maybe you've read about some of this stuff because we've written a bunch of articles in the magazine. So maybe they're not secrets to you after I reveal them today. But we like to think of them as these secrets because so many chiropractors are oblivious to what it takes to really build retention. And so let's get right into today's material. A little background real quick. I like to share just a little history between, what gives us the authority to talk to you guys about retention. There you see me on the far right with the funny looking mustache. And there you see little Holly right there in the middle there. That's probably about the year 2005, 2006, somewhere in that year, some time ago in front of my chiropractic office. And in this picture, you see the name of my practice, the Chiropractic Wellness Owner. And I want to just share a quick little story. And that is when I first got in practice in the early 90s, I came into practice wanting to do wellness like a lot of us, lifetime chiropractic care, tell the story, the whole thing, the whole shebang. And long story short, and I'll keep it short so we can get right into today's material, I got beat over the head. What I mean is I went in wanting to do this whole thing and I really struggled in practice. And where I struggled is almost every patient that came in to see me was part of an insurance plan, an HMO or a PPO that I was not part of. And as a result of that, I had hardly any patients signing up. And then when they did sign up for care, I really struggled with people following through and dropping out. If I was in front of a live audience right now and ask you to raise your hands, I'm going to guess a lot of you have had similar struggles where people drop out of care. In fact, that's probably why you're on today's webinar is you want to figure out, why are my patients dropping out? What do I have to do to keep them under care? And I made it a mission of mine to figure that out because I was taught that if patients knew what I knew, and were educated, they would follow me to the ends of the earth and do what I do. And I was sadly mistaken to find out that wasn't the case because I was doing a great job teaching and educating my patients, and yet they would still drop out of care. And I said, there's got to be a solution to this. I mean, for 50 years, people have been, chiropractors have been learning about educating patients and having them stay under care. And I wasn't experiencing that. So I made it a mission, and I did that for a number of years of studying what drove our patients' behavior to stay with us versus them not dropping out. And through my studies, I came to the conclusion there's really 4 secrets. And that's what today is all about, is I want to share with you those so you don't go through the same struggles I went through in practice. Now, Holly showed earlier in the slides kind of introducing today, there were some slides rotating. You might have seen this come up as well. We did a movie a couple of years ago. And if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to write this down, thecallingmovie.com. Go watch this at a later time. It's really kind of a movie depiction of what I'm going to be sharing you is the discovery of this process of retention. If you want to see an inspiring story of, what it is to become a chiropractor and some of the challenges we overcome, most every chiropractor I talk to or CA who watches this comes back saying how much they enjoyed being inspired by this story. So how many movies have you ever watched about becoming a chiropractor? Probably not many. So take a moment and later on today, it's only about a 45 minute movie. So you can watch it during a lunch break or something. Thecallingmovie.com, you can stream it for free. All right, enough of that. Let's get into today's material. What do you believe is the number one challenge facing family practice doctors or chiropractors in general? I think based upon the title of today's talk, and that is the number one thing we see is poor retention. We see this across the board. And in fact, I believe us chiropractors have an addiction to marketing and getting new patients simply because we don't keep our patients. We're constantly looking for the next new gimmick to get new ones. What's the new marketing strategy? What do I have to do to get my book full of new patients? Why? Because we're not keeping them. And I bet, in fact, I know this, if you didn't have a retention problem, you probably wouldn't care about new patients as much as you likely are right now, of caring about where's my next new patient. And I know me personally in practice, that was a major frustration I had, which was I'm always needing the market. And me personally, I'm not a big fan of having to do that. I wanted to take care of people and get great results and not worry about getting new ones all the time. Ultimately, that actually became the experience once we mastered retention.
Dr. Bodzin, I want to chime in on that
Yes.
for just a moment, because from a team member standpoint, as your chiropractic assistant, it sucks for us to have patients dropping out of care because you as the doctor are breathing down my neck like, where'd Sally go? Where'd John go? Why aren't they here?
Sure.
And, so from a team standpoint too, it doesn't feel good as well to have our patients drop out.
I'm glad you bring that up because this is a team effort. It absolutely is. And in fact, you see here on my next slide where I say, what is poor retention costing you in the practice? So you personally, doctor, you and your team, what is it costing you? Is it frustration? Is it money? Is it time? Is it always needing to be marketing for new patients? Like, poor retention has a major impact. You might have seen one of the rotating slides in the introduction where it says a 5% increase in retention has an increase of 75% increase in profit. Why is that? It's because it costs more to get new ones than it does to keep them. So it's costing you financially. But I don't want to make this webinar all about you, the doctor, and I don't want to make it all about money, although that's a nice benefit of having better retention. Honestly, what's it costing your patients? So let's talk about this for a second, because I believe we all became chiropractors to serve humanity, to take care of people, to get the miracles with chiropractic. And I believe that one of the major reasons doctors don't always get the best results with their patients, clinical outcomes, is not because they're not good at what they do as a chiropractor. It's not because you don't know a masterful adjustment. In fact, if there was an adjustment I could teach you right now that would always result in getting better clinical results, I bet every one of you would want to learn it so that you had it in your tool chest to be able to help people. What I'm going to argue the point is that one of the reasons we don't get great results with the patient is not because you don't know this magical adjustment. It's simply because the patient fails to follow through. That the patient dropping out early leads to poorer clinical outcomes. That if you want to get better clinical results with your patients, it behooves you to learn what it takes to get people to follow through. In fact, I would argue it's even more important than that magical adjustment. That you knowing that a patient showing up and being there and following through, you will get results with them versus if they're not there at all. So this is why retention, I believe, is so valuable and important. Yes, it serves you as the doctor. Yes, you'll make more money. Yes, you'll have less stress in your life and you'll be happier and all those things. And that's all wonderful. But at the end of the day, it will also serve your patients to a greater extent. So always keep that in mind. As I'm going through what I'm sharing with you today, that is actually the purpose of this. It's to get better results with patients. The side effect of that is you as the doctor get the benefit from that and your team gets the benefit from that. Successful, high-profit chiropractic family practices do have one thing in common. And I'm in a unique position right now that I have the perspective of working with literally thousands of offices and getting to see the data across all these offices. And what we see now are the practices that have high profit. The thing they have in common is simply this. They do have high retention. Almost 100% across the board, we see the practices that are the $1 million plus practices, the really successful high profit practices, they all have high retention. Are there exceptions? Yes, there are exceptions, but I'm speaking in the world of what we're trying to accomplish here today, which is helping more people with long-term care. Ultimately, we see that across the board, that's what they have in common.
And Dr. Bodzin, I want to just emphasize for our audience, this doesn't mean these practices are high volume practices. They just have high retention.
Absolutely. You can be high retention seeing 100 visits a week. You can be high retention seeing 1,000 visits a week. The point is that whoever you're taking care of, you're not losing them. That's ultimately the intention here. So high retention family practices have one thing in common. I just got done saying they have the high profit practices, high retention. They have high retention, but what they have in common that gives them that retention is they have loyal patients. That's ultimately what they have. It's a practice full of patients that are loyal to the practice. And let me give you my definition of what a loyal patient is, or an example of it is a better way of putting it. Years ago, when I was studying the behavior of patients and what drove them to be there, I used to interview people. I put them on camera and I would interview them, asking them all kinds of questions like, why are you still here? You've been coming to me for 2 years. Like, really, why are you here? And we would get in these conversations. And one example is a patient that I interviewed who was a teacher. And she went on to say a bunch of things. And one of the things that really in my opinion, captured this was she said, through my work, I recently got insurance that would cover me if I went somewhere else. But I'd rather not do that. I'd rather pay for it myself and stay here. Now, she had already been with me for a number of years and been a few hundred visits with me already. To me, that is the quintessential definition. It's being paid for her to go somewhere else, but in spite of that, she'd rather continue to spend the money out of her own pocket and stay with me. That to me is a loyal patient. They're loyal. Now imagine a practice full of those people that no matter what goes on, they're not leaving you. COVID doesn't matter. They're not leaving you. Insurance changes doesn't matter. They're not leaving you. Like, they're solid with you. And I've discovered there are 4 secrets to creating those loyal patients. And that's what we're going to get into today. I'm just kind of introducing why this is so important, so you really pay attention to these 4 things we're going to talk about. A loyal patient is 80% more likely to choose you over competitors. They're twice as likely to recommend you to others, and they're likely to spend twice as more. So again, just some of the benefits of having loyal patients in the practice. So what makes a patient loyal and not drop out? All right, here we go. Here's the things that are important. The 4 secrets to patient loyalty, and I'm just going to reveal them here for you. Number 1 is loyal patients need feedback. They need feedback. What does that mean? It means you need to be able to report back to a patient how they're progressing with care. Are they benefiting? And it needs to be in a way, and it needs to be done in a way that's so intuitive that it automatically makes sense to them. Let me give you an example. Fitbits are really popular, right? People wear these little Fitbits or these digital watches that give them feedback. Why do you think people like those so much? Because it lets them know, like, get off your lazy butt. You need to do 5,000 more steps. Like, that feedback motivates them to take action. And it's very intuitive. They don't need to think about what it means. They feel the buzz. They, oh, I got to go do more steps. Right?
My Fitbit just buzzed. I'm out of here.
Yeah, there you go. Go do those steps. No, the point being is that feedback drives people's behavior, quite frankly. And doctor, are you giving your patients feedback? Are you giving them feedback in a way that automatically makes sense to them? I don't mean feedback like, oh, you're doing a great job. I mean, are you giving them objective feedback so when they see the results, they know they're making progress? Because one of the reasons a patient will drop out is because they don't know how they're doing. That's one of the reasons they'll leave you. They have no idea how they're feeling better, especially once they're feeling better. How do they know they're still benefiting from care unless you give them some feedback, letting them know the progress they're making or that they've reached a level and they're keeping that level? Point is that secret number 1 is feedback. So make a note to yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think your feedback is? Okay, make a note of that. Number 2, loyal patients need forecasting of care. What that basically means is people need to know what they're signing up for. People have it in, they respond better long-term if right from the beginning, what they committed to is they know everything up front. Meaning there's no like, let's get you started. Let's see how you do. We'll kind of figure it out along the way. None of this unclarity or wishy-washiness. When they sign up for care, if you're recommending 3 months of care, that's what they're signing up for. If you're thinking they need 6 months of care or 8 months of care or a year, whatever it is you think they need clinically, that's what they're being presented right from the beginning. So they know what they're getting themselves involved in. And we're going to address this one a little bit more specifically as we go through today's material. It's not only the care that's being forecasted, quite frankly, it's also the finances. They know their time commitments, which is the clinical part, like how much time are they giving you for care? And they also know the financial commitment. They know what they're going to be paying for in the future. Number 3 is, this is a really, really important one. Loyal patients need frictionless payments. What I mean is you need to make it so it's easy for your patients to be paying you. The more difficult it is, the more friction in the process, meaning every time they stop at the desk, they have to make a payment, or they run a balance and then you send them a statement in the mail, or you use third-party financing and they send a bill in the mail and they have to write a check and pay it. Like, the more involved the patient is ongoing in the payment cycle, the less likely they're going to follow through, the less loyal they'll be. You want to make it almost where money is not even a thought anymore once they've enrolled. So we want to make it as frictionless as possible. And this is why we'll share later how you want to automate everything. Everything to do with payments, you want to automate. You do not want anything to be a manual process in any form.
I'll just say from a team member standpoint, like, I know a lot of you have experienced probably a front desk chiropractic assistant who sucks at collecting money or who cringes at awkward financial conversations. And so the more frictionless you have your payments, the easier it's going to be on those team members who aren't comfortable with asking people for money. And I know we'll get
Absolutely.
into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all of these, by the way, have benefits to both you as the office and the team, as well as benefits to the patient. The benefits to the patient for all of these, quite frankly, is it helps them follow through with care, which will get them better results. It's easier for them. But you in the office, the benefits again is going to be, it's easier for you. It's more streamlined. It's more profitable. There's lots of things that go along with this. So that was number 3, is frictionless payments. Number 4, and that is the one you're already familiar with. In fact, when I survey doctors and ask them, like, what do you think it takes to build retention? What do you think, before we go into the secrets, like I haven't revealed this, right? And I have a conversation, almost every chiropractor talks to says the same thing. I need to educate my patients. Like if they understood chiropractic, they would do this. Like they just don't get it. Like chiropractors learn how to educate better, which is great. I'm not saying don't do that, but you're fooling yourself if you think that's all it takes. In fact, it's only one piece of it. We call it frequent contact. That's the way we refer to it as education, is you're frequently in contact with your patients. Because quite frankly, it's not the education that's important, although I don't want to, well, let me say it is important. It's the frequency of it. It's how often you're doing education that's more important than actually the content of the education. But my point is that when it comes to retention, the education component is one piece of it. It's not the only piece. And again, I talk to most chiropractors and they mistakenly believe that's all they need to do is educate more. And I bet every one of you has a patient who got the big idea of chiropractic. Like they understand chiropractic and yet they still dropped out of care. I bet every one of you have had that experience. And I also bet you also have patients who don't understand chiropractic and they're still with you for years. Like the education has not really had any impact on them. They still don't know what a subluxation is, for example, yet they still come to you, right? So we all have these people. And we also know people know they shouldn't smoke. They have the knowledge and they still do. They have the knowledge that they should eat better and they still don't. They have the knowledge they should exercise and they don't. I think what I'm trying to get across here is that education in of itself doesn't change the behavior of a person. And the behavior we're trying to incorporate here is getting people to follow through. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, is get them to follow through. So if you want people to follow through, these are the 4 secrets to that. We refer to these as the retention principles. That's what I refer to them. And a simple way to remember them is the 4 Fs. Okay, the 4 Fs: feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. What I encourage you to do is ask yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, how well you do each of these. In your own practice, on a scale of 0 to 10, how good are you at feedback? On a scale of 0 to 10, how good are you at forecasting care and doing that with patients? On a scale of 0 to 10, how good are you with your frictionless payments, et cetera, and frequent contact? Like you could rate yourself and you might identify like, yeah, we're really good at frequent contact. We're really good at educating our patients, which many chiropractors are. But our payment system sucks. Like everybody stops at the front desk and pays every single time. That's going to kill your retention. Or we don't do any forecasting of care. People start care and they come in for a few visits and then they drop, there's no plan. Okay. You can identify where your challenge is in your practice, but we are the 4 areas that we focus on building retention. So to create patient loyalty, we apply the 4 Fs through what we refer to as a loyal patient journey, Oh, I see that the 4 Fs were put into the chat. That's great. So you guys have it right there. I wasn't sure if that was a question that came
Nope, it's me. I'll interrupt you if you need to look at that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the create patient loyalty, you apply the 4 Fs throughout the loyal patient. So you're like, what's the loyal patient journey? What does that mean? So every patient is on a journey. They call us, they come in, that may be it. They call us, they come in, they get an exam, a set of x-rays or an evaluation, they start care, they drop out, or maybe they stay, or they get the point is that every patient's on a journey through the practice. We want to create what's called a loyal patient journey. And what it looks like is this. This is a loyal patient journey. It's literally a game board of 11 key steps you take a patient through to become loyal. Step 11, they became loyal to the practice. That's the end goal, is they are now a loyal practice member. And we have identified there's 11 distinct steps throughout the entire process. But the thing you need to be aware of, and by the way, we're going to give you a copy of this. We're going to show you at the end of today's webinar. When you stick around to the end, we'll show you how you can download a copy of this for yourself. So there are these dangers, these pitfalls. Like any good game you play, there are dangers along the way. It reminds you of Chutes and Ladders, that kind of thing. Remember those board games. Dangers. What are the dangers? The dangers are the common scenarios where we lose a patient. There are pretty common places where we lose people, and we've identified, well, if there's common places we lose them, how do we prevent those from happening? And we've identified on the game board throughout the entire loyal patient journey, these danger zones. For example, someone comes in for an evaluation and they don't come back for the report of findings. Have you ever had that happen? Sure you have. Have you ever had a patient you did a reporting findings with and then you never see him again? Or have you ever had a patient who started care and when the pain went away or the insurance ran out, you lost them? Or maybe they completed care and when it came to transitioning to wellness or maintenance, you lost them there. Like there's these common points we lose people, and there are strategies that we put in place throughout the entire journey that alleviates them, that neutralizes them. And what we found is the 4 Fs, the 4 retention principles, are the tools that you use throughout the entire game. In fact, on the board, you'll see these little purple icons. Those represent the retention principle, one of the 4 Fs that you're using all along at that step of the journey. So we show you not just the tools to use, but when do you use them through the entire process so that it leads to that person becoming loyal to the practice? Because we figured it out. There's a process to do this. It's not just have them come in, go to your new patient workshop, get banged over the head with patient education, convince them to stay under care. We're going to go ahead and do a very specific process of taking care of that person, both clinically and then as well as applying the 4 Fs throughout the entire journey for this process. So let me summarize it this way so we can kind of paint a big picture. Let's start with the end in mind. Again, the 7 habits of highly effective people. For those of you who read the book from Stephen Covey, we always say one of the habits is start with the end in mind. So the end in mind here, going back to the journey, was the end in mind is to create a loyal patient. That is the end of this. But I want to change gears here for a second and talk about kind of the overall concept. The end game, doctor, is to have success for you and your patient. A successful patient experience, getting great results, a successful experience for you, the doctor, having success in life, success in practice, more free time, however you define that, but success. Now, there are lots of ways to have success. I'll give you an example of a way to have success that's not necessarily what we're teaching, but it's another example. Another example might be is theoretically, I could give you a webinar on how to become a great PI chiropractor. Attract PI patients, work with attorneys, yada, 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 and go down that path, which is very different than what I'm teaching now, but that is a way to have success. The way we're advocating for success is to build retention, that retention in practice will lead to the success. As I said earlier, that the most successful practices, the $1 million plus cash-based practices, all have one thing in common, and that is they have high retention. That's what we're talking about here, is that your success is built upon retention. And what is that retention built upon? It's built upon this loyal patient journey, that when you execute a loyal patient journey over and over and over with many different people, that will turn your practice into a high retention practice. So your success is built upon retention, but your retention is built upon a journey that creates loyal patients. That loyal patient journey is built upon 4 premises or 4 principles. Number 1 is, I just got done saying, feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. When you execute those 4 principles throughout the journey, that will lead to a loyal patient giving you the retention and the success for you and your patients. Now, those principles lead to significant success. And what I want to share with you just for a moment here, I'm just going to take a brief moment and show you some examples of what happens in practice. What are the results? Now, the way I'm going to show you these results is simply the financial impact it has on their practice. But the financial impact is a representation of their growth. Think of the financial impact as the number of people they're seeing, the retention of the practice. As they grow, obviously revenue should grow. And that's what I want to show you here. Here's a practice going all the way back to 2007, 2008. So over 10 years ago now. And I'm going to show you a number of case studies here that show the growth over many years. Because I'm quite frankly, sick and tired of the quick overnight thing. Like, oh, I could teach you to do something, and next month my collections grew this. And I see those kind of comments all the time. Hey, I joined such and such this, or I did such and such that, and I doubled my practice in a month. Well, that's all well and good, but I can tell you that doesn't necessarily translate to long-term growth. What I'm talking about is when you build a practice that's high retention, you will see growth long-term. So here's a practice, and I'll go through these quickly. You'll see each year, you could see for yourself how their annual cash collections. And I should clarify, this is not insurance money. This is across the counter cash collected from the patient directly, patient payments. Each year, their growth. And you can see it's been kind of a steady growth from 2007 to 2015, about a 7-8 year period. They went from about 141,000, 142,000 to $500,000. Not bad in those years, but each year continuing to grow year after year. In 2018, they did their first $1 million year. 2019, 1.3, 2020, 1.7, and 2021, 2.2 million. We all know that 2019 and 2020 were some challenging years, especially, 2020 was a challenging year for many of us, right? But yet they still grew. And 2021 even grew further. The only practices, quite frankly, that I've ever witnessed that do this, that what you're seeing here growing year after year, not just for a few months, not have a good month and a bad month and level off. The only practice I've ever seen do this are the practices that are continuously adding new patients to their practice. So they're marketing and they're getting new ones. But more importantly, they're not losing them on the back end. Because if you're losing them just as quick as you're getting them, the practice will plateau. Your revenues will stay the same year after year. And that's generally what we see in most practices. You get to some level, and most chiropractors that, they get to some level and they kind of just stay there. They might have some ups and downs, but generally they stay pretty flat. The only practices I've seen that grow year after year after, this is a decade plus, right? We're talking 2008 to 2021, every year having that growth. On average, we see practices do about 24% a year. Okay, so if we go back to this practice, you can see some years they had, the purple number shows their annual growth. Some years were smaller, like 5%, and other years were higher. Okay, but and the gold numbers show the total growth from the beginning to where they are in that present year. So you see, on average, just every year they grow on average. Okay, here's another practice that went from. Were you going to say something, Holly?
No, I just, this is really incredible. And I know you have multiple examples, but from a success standpoint, I just want to invite the audience to just take this in for a minute. How would it feel to have that type of success, to have that type of patient retention where you weren't worried about your next new patient marketing event? You weren't worried about attending the screening event at the mall. You didn't have to worry about those things. You had more time with your family, vacation, your patients are getting better clinical outcomes. Your staff is happy because patients are following through and they can help cheer along the patients on the journey. Just imagine how that feels. I think that's just an incredible, way to experience life. And that's feedback that we get from our members. And
exactly. I was just going to say that, Holly, we're not just saying that because, we want you to feel those things. That's what's communicated to us by our doctors, our clients who are doing these things. So these numbers, again, it's just a mere representation of the fact that the practice is growing and all the benefits that go along with that. There's a lot of programs out there that talk about growing a practice. I've yet to see any other program demonstrate data like we're showing you here of the consistent growth year after year, decade plus. Here's another practice going from, every one of these is a different practice, all of them following the principles that we're teaching of these 4 F's as they add more people to the practice and not lose them. Practice after practice. Here's one last year did 2 million. Here's one again at all levels, whether they started up with you can see here, they started off with 260,000 in their first year here, and they're now doing 1.5 million in 2021. Okay, another practice. This is incredible. They started off very well. They started off their first year, 1.3 million. 2021, they did 4.3 million in cash collections. That's absolutely incredible, right? These practices are growing like crazy. So again, just sharing with you some data to support what we're saying, sort of like you might share some data with a patient as to the benefits of chiropractic, that when you apply the principles of chiropractic, people get results. What I'm showing you is when you apply the principles of retention, these are the results. There's 4 principles of retention. that lead to this type of growth in a practice. Also, from the standpoint of these are real people, right? So going back, this is dollars. These are the actual people we're taking care of. This is showing, for my old practice here, all the patients on the wall or hundreds of patients on the wall. This is just a small sample of it in this photograph here of hundreds of adjustments with hundreds and hundreds of patients over the course of many years. And we used to call these our wall of stars. And I had a lot of fun with it. So these are loyal patients, people being celebrated in their growth in the practice and following through.
Wait, Dr. Bodzin, go back. I just want everybody to see you have patients going from 50 visits, 100 visits, 200 visits, 300 visits. Yeah. Like that is a high retention practice.
In the practice, you don't see the whole hallway here, where these were at. It went all the way up to 800 visits. So we had people who had been with us for many, many years. Now, again, I started off today's webinar talking about the struggles I had. It didn't start off this way. For the first couple of years, it was quite the struggle. But by the time I retired from practice in 2011, my average patient had been with me just over 5 years, just over 300 visits on average. Plenty that were doing more than that, plenty that were fewer than that, but that was the average PVA at that point in time. So very proud of that people that we really figured out what it took for retention. So let's say this symptom. I love this statement here. Systems. I'm talking about a chiropractor. Symptoms. Okay. Systems trump mission statements. What's happening in the halls trumps what's written on the walls. What you don't see in this photo is at our front desk, we had a big mission statement behind us on our front desk. And I'm sure you guys probably have mission statements as well. What we're saying here, though, is that it's not just your mission statement. It's the systems you operate in your practice. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you write on the walls. What matters is what you do. What you do. Do you have systems to do things? And we're going to transition here talking about some systems now, because you either have systems by intent or default. Your systems are always a result of what you created or what you've tolerated. Have you put energy and effort in designing the systems you use in your practice so that they serve you versus not serve you? Let me give you an example. We talk about frictionless payments as an example. Someone stopping at the desk every visit to make a payment, high friction, it's a system, not a great one. A system that helped you have frictionless payments would be all payments are automated, for example. Person shows up, they get their adjustment, they leave. And even if they're paying one visit at a time, it all happens automatic behind the scenes, as an example. So if you design systems based upon the principles we have, and we'll share that with you. Great systems are a set of procedures based upon a clearly defined set of principles that determines how you do something. So what I mean is that when I see this is there's 4 principles. The 4 F's: frequent contact, frictionless payments, forecasting care, and feedback. Do you have systems for those 4 things? If you don't, that may be why you're struggling with retention in your practice. So going back to the 4 principles, feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact, we now introduce those are executed throughout the journey. So again, we want our success. That is predicated on retention. The retention is predicated on a journey. The journey is predicated on these 4 principles. To execute these 4 principles throughout the journey, we use systems. We have a system called the wellness score that gives patients feedback, a care plan calculator for forecasting care, auto debit system for frictionless payments, and a drip education system for frequent contact. Those 4 systems are what you do. Actually, not what's on the walls, but what you actually execute and do, the actions you take throughout seeing a patient in order to turn them into a loyal patient. We're going to focus today, though, on only 2 of them. I'm going to review them all, but I'm going to put some focus on these 2. Why is that? Because these 2, forecasting care and frictionless payments, quite frankly, have the largest impact on your retention. They're not all, even though going back here, these 4 principles and these 4 things are all, underneath the triangle here, underneath the journey. You'll notice forecasting care and frictionless payments is sort of supporting the weight, right? It's the big part in the middle, because we found they actually have the greatest impact in your retention, more so than the education part and more so than the feedback part. They all play a role. Don't get me wrong. They all play a role, but these 2 play the biggest role. So we're going to focus some attention on that for you guys, so you get the most benefit from today's content. What we found is your patient visit average, your retention, another way of putting it, your PVA, however you want to refer to it, is significantly impacted by forecasting and how frictionless you make your payments. In fact, when I interview doctors and they share with me how they do these 2 things, do they do any forecasting? And if so, what does it look like? And how frictionless are their payments? Based on what they share with me, it's pretty predictable what your PVA is. It's pretty predictable. It's actually uncanny actually how predictable it is. In fact, when I was studying in my own practice, this whole thing about retention, we did these kind of analysis of the different characteristics of our patients. Like, are they male, are they female, are they families, are they moms, how old are they, socioeconomic status, all these kind of things. And none of that stuff really had a major statistical correlation with the retention, except for these two: forecasting of their care and how frictionless their payments had a statistical significance in their retention. So let's go through some examples here, how easy it is for us to predict your PVA based upon 4 common ways that we do these things. So let's go through each one. First is the most basic, which is per visit, meaning when you forecast your care with your patient, basically you're just seeing them one visit at a time. There is no forecasting, quite frankly, other than the patient knowing each time they come in, they don't know whether they're going to come in again until you tell them. That's what we call a per visit practice. That's the forecasting. They don't know if they need a dozen visits, 3 dozen visits, 50. They don't know any of that at all. It hasn't been communicated to them. So as far as the patient's concerned, they don't know they have anything except for what you tell them the next visit. Generally, the payment model in this case is also pay per visit, where patient stops at the desk every visit they come in and makes a payment. I saw a presentation given by a chiropractor recently talking about how they collect their fees, and they were a big advocate of people paying visit by visit. They didn't want to do any credit cards. They wanted to use Venmo. They wanted people physically paying in cash. And my mind's going, you're just destroying your retention by doing what you're doing here. In essence, the PVA of this practice is going to be right around 12. I don't care what else you do, quite frankly. That's generally where we see it. And it's no surprise that in America, at least the US, the average PVA is around 12 visits. This is generally what we see in many practices. So the model is per visit forecasting. The payment model is pay per visit. And generally the PVA gets stuck right around 12 visits, no matter what else they do. Let's talk about the next model. So the next model is you're recommending patients get enough care to go from exam to exam. So doctor, this is you if you're doing the following. If you're at a report of findings and you say to your patient, hey, Holly, let's get you started with care. I'll see you for a few weeks. I'll reevaluate you in 3 or 4 weeks from now, and then we'll take it from there. So it's the patient knows they're getting care to get to a re-exam, but they don't know anything beyond that. Whether you think they're going to need care or not, point is that they don't know they need anything beyond that next re-exam. So generally in this type of practice, the business model or the payment model is often done as a block of visits. This is where a doctor has someone buy, you could buy 10 visits at a time or 12 visits at a time. You just buy a block of visits that the patient's going to use generally to get to the next progress exam. This is a common model. And what we see in these practices, the PVA gets stuck right around 24 to 36. Somewhere in that range, it gets stuck there no matter what else you do. The reason I believe it gets stuck there is simply because most patients drop out after 2 or 3 blocks. After the second or third block, they're feeling better. They're questioning why you keep recommending more care. And they leave thinking this is one of those offices that just want me to come the rest of my life. Like they have this sense of how long are they going to keep telling me I still need more care? Every time they examine me, I think I'm done because I'm feeling better. And yet they keep saying I need more care. Most doctors in this category also tell me they feel stressed when they go into progress exams because they know the patient still hasn't committed to any future care, and they're gonna have to kind of quote unquote sell them on the idea of more care. And it doesn't feel good as a clinician going into your progress exams. So that's one of the downfalls of it. But I'll just mention that is a common model, and the PVA gets stuck right around 24 to 36. The reason being is the patient generally drops out after 2 or 3 progress exams. The next forecasting is a care plan. And this is what I'm an advocate of. And this is, and by the way, I should mention, in a practice, you may have a reason to use you may have a reason to do an exam to exam with a specific patient. You may have a reason for per visit in certain patients, but the majority of your patients that come in, you're generally going to be recommending a care plan is what we recommend you do. The care plan is absolutely the best forecasting you can do. You're basically outlining from start to finish everything you think the patient's going to need. Is that 6 months? Is it 3 months? Is it 2 months? Is it a year? How many visits? How many progress exams? Is there orthotics? Is there a cervical pillow? Is there a cervical traction unit? Are there new x-rays? Like, what do you believe the plan of care is? And it's your job as a clinician to do your best at estimating that. I don't buy the excuse when doctors say, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. What if things change? Yes, all of those things can happen. Things could change. But your job as a clinician is to be able to have a good sense of where you think this should take. You shouldn't be kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So that's a little tough love, because a lot of times I hear doctors say, well, I can't predict the future. That's your job. That is your job as a clinician, is to prognosticate, prognosis of a patient. So you come up with a care plan that you believe is best. Now, could it change? Of course it can change. But let's just assume you're making a fair estimate of what you believe it's going to take. In that care plan, whatever it is you came up to the conclusion of recommending, you then have a choice of how you collect the payment for that, right? You recommended 6 months of care, let's say. How are you going to collect the fees for that? Well, one way that's common is a prepayment. And I'll just start off by saying, I'm not a fan of this, but it is an option. This is where you have the patient pre-purchase the entire program of care, where they write a check or whatever, pay all up front. So in that case, you're basically you're selling your care plan. In these practices, we generally see your PVAs around 50 to 75. It gets stuck right around there. And really the main reason is because most people drop out after their first care plan. After they get done with it, they are feeling better and they have a big decision of whether they want to buy again. Bottom line is, we see in these practices, when I interview the doctors who are mainly doing prepays, they all tell me the same thing. For the most part, they basically say, I have a terrible re-sign rate. That's where they lose most of their patients, is at the end of the program. Next is a care plan. That, Eric, thank you for making that comment. That's where I'm at. Exam to exam, my PVA is in the mid-20s. There you go. That's predictable, right? Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being bold enough to share that to us. Forecasting care. Care plan. Again, it's the same thing, except your payment is different in this case. Now we're going to do a monthly auto debit, So in this case, instead of people prepaying for it, we're just simply going to put them on a payment that's automated each month. Now you could do a little combination of both, which is what I literally like. Maybe make a down payment with smaller monthly payments. But the bottom line is, they're on a monthly payment that's automated. And we see these practices have a PVA of about 150 plus. That made up the majority of my practice. And in those charts I got showing you before of all that growth, that makes up the majority of those practices too. It's the majority of the revenue is this monthly recurring revenue. And maybe you've heard the term that before, recurring revenue. It's like the nirvana of business, right? Every business wants to have recurring revenue. And you can do that in your practice too. You could have it built upon recurring revenue. Let me also clarify, what we're not saying here is you charge a monthly fee for unlimited care. I'm not talking about that. We're not talking about any kind of illegal ways of doing this. There's a very compliant way of doing this, which is beyond the scope of today's webinar. The whole talk about compliance and how you do all this stuff, well, we do teach that. And we do show our doctors how to do that. It's beyond the scope of today's time. But the point is, there's a right and a wrong way to do these things. We teach you the right way of doing it. So going back, our success is built upon retention. Our retention is built upon a journey. Our journey is executed with those 4 principles. And the way we execute those 4 principles is using those 4 systems to do those things throughout the journey. So I just want to briefly go through each of the 4 principles and how they're executed. For example, when it comes to feedback, we say that's intuitive. So it's natural for people to understand it, because I think we could all agree as chiropractors, many of the things we do, patients don't understand. And we spend an enormous amount of time trying to teach them what it is we're doing and why, et cetera. Just make it really simple. We say, grade your reports, just like you got in school. When you do an exam and you're reporting it to people, simply grade it. Let them know what their letter grade is. Because imagine what happens with a patient at a report of findings when you say to them, hey, based on everything we evaluated, we determined your health as a D.
D as in dog. Yeah.
Yeah, D as in dog, not a B, or C minus. The response you get is a patient goes, well, crap, what do we have to do to improve that? Like, instead of them going from like, what do we have to do to get rid of my neck pain? It changes the conversation to, well, doc, how do we get that D to an A? The beauty of using a letter grade is that everybody knows what they mean already. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So we use a report. Our system, one of the things I'll just share with you is Cash Practice's wellness score. The system we develop is a report card for your patients, basically. Think of it that way. You put in your exam findings. We don't tell you what to examine, by the way. You choose what you want to examine. We can help you choose those things. But the point is that you have about 100 different things you pick. If you want to add your own things in there, you can. But you measure the things you want to measure, and then it regrades it. And then you use that as your way of communicating to your patient feedback. Think of it as your practice's Fitbit. Think of it that way. You're giving your patient a easy to understand way of knowing where they progress, because over time, you're going to show them how their grade went from an F to a D, to a C, to a B, to an A over time, and they naturally understand they're making progress,
and
which
Dr.
satisfies
Bodzin,
that need. Go ahead, Holly.
I gotta say, from your team standpoint, like it's easy for the CA to communicate. You know, we got the patient on the phone. They're like, oh, I need to cancel my appointment. I feel better. John, I understand you're feeling better, but your overall health and wellness grade is a D minus. Remember, the goal of care here is to get you to an A. So let's reschedule your appointment, not cancel it. So instead of us trying to like figure out the language that you guys use, which some of us don't even know, we also understand letter grades, and it's easy for us to help hold the patient accountable and see them follow through.
This becomes your yardstick, your measuring tape, your litmus test for deciding where a patient's at, for letting and communicating that in a way. We know as clinicians, you know where they're at. You don't need this as a clinician for you personally. This is for you to communicate what you know to your patient in a way that makes sense to them. It bridges the gap from, let me teach you all this stuff about all the tests I do, to simply, hey, you're a D. It simplifies everything. And it's really revolutionary for offices to do this. So the feedback we get from offices, like, I find going over progress exams very satisfying now. It's very nice to be able to say to a patient, especially once they're feeling better. And I know you've all experienced this. You're doing a progress exam on someone, they feel better, and you're struggling with kind of getting across why they still need care. If you present them this, yeah, I know you're feeling better, you're at a C. Do you want to stay at a C, or do you want to go for an A? Yeah, Doc, I do want to get to that A. All right, well, let's stay the course. Let's keep up with what we're doing here. It becomes a very effective tool for doing that. And we call that the wellness score. Here's an example of, the multiple pages of the wellness score. It's a printed report you give the patient so they can see the progress they're making. A very effective tool. Next, let's talk about forecasting care. So we just got done with feedback. Forecasting care. What is forecasting care? It's you presenting to the patient up front everything they need, whether that's 6 months of care, 4 months of care. As I said earlier, it's a legal document that you're going to present to them. It's even more important today because if you're not familiar with the No Surprises Act that was just instituted this year, the No Surprises Act is a federal mandate that basically says, or federal law now, that basically says you must present to patients a good faith estimate of the expected costs of care. You have to do it. It's no longer like just good practice management, because we've been teaching this for a long time, but this new law basically says you have to do it. So we now have a tool called the Care Plan Calculator that actually recently went through some updates to help satisfy the No Surprises Act, so that when you're presenting your finances to a patient, they know up front, this is how many adjustments I'm getting, how many therapies, everything, all the costs involved, what my financial expectations are. All of that's been laid out for them. And again, legally, you are required to do this now. If you have further questions on it, Holly, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say, just from the team standpoint, the CAs are typically the ones going over the financials, and patients love their forecasted care. They love seeing it itemized out. And if you could actually go to the next slide, patients can see everything that the doctor recommended in the report of findings, clearly itemized. It's an all-inclusive program of care designed to get them the results the doctor outlined in the report of findings. And there's no surprises. Patients don't want to be surprised. They don't want some complex legal document. This is a complete compliant agreement where they're like, yeah, I feel good about enrolling into care. I know I can stop at any time. I'm not locked in. I know what happens if I go on vacation. Like, it addresses all of that. And gone are the days where homemade spreadsheets or fill in the blank care plans are compliant or even appropriate. Like, this is a professional document, and the audience can see right there, this example. And by the way, this is an example only for illustration purposes. It says a 6-month corrective care plan. And then under that, it says good faith estimate. So we're helping to satisfy the needs of the No Surprises Act here.
Correct. And so when you're sitting down at that report of findings and it's time now to go over finances, you're literally, you or your CA, generally the CA, is going to be reviewing these documents or this document with the patient to go ahead and get a confirmation which of the payment options works best for you. And at the bottom, you see 3 options there: recurring, initial plus recurring, and prepayment. The patient would choose what works best for them. And again, as Holly just said, this is just an example. These are custom made depending on what you're recommending, what your fees are, et cetera. And everything is calculated calculated accordingly.
And you can also plug in compliant discounts.
Correct. Like you see on here, many of you are maybe familiar with the company Chiro Health USA. We work with that company in order to make sure that you're staying compliant with your discounts. Again, that's kind of beyond the scope of the time we have today. But the point is that these plans serve the purpose of helping you satisfy the No Surprises Act, as well as giving you the tool you need to forecast your care correctly.
And we have a question coming in. Yes, this care plan can be used for other services, neurofeedback, functional medicine, basket weaving, massage, like anything you want. Literally, you could list it out.
It's not tying to a specific type of service. It's customizable where you could put in whatever you want. The terms of the agreement, these are the legal terms that Holly mentioned. Like, what if they go on vacation? What if they get in a car accident? Now their PI case? What if they have to stop care? Like, all the legalities that go into a program are outlined in here. Place where they sign it, etc. All the requirements you need in order to have a custom document for that to be the case. And by the way, these documents are created in a way that's customized for your practice, as well as, fills in all your practice information and the patient's information, etc. What you're seeing on the screen right here is a representation of when we enroll someone. When someone actually enrolls in a care plan, we make it frictionless, where everything is digitally signed for all the signatures. The payment is automatically, the payment is charged. The recurring payment is automatically scheduled. All of this happens in one simple step. And again, it's a little beyond the scope of today's time, but if you want to learn more about that, we'll show you at the end how you can participate in learning more about that type of stuff. But the point is that the whole process of enrolling a patient becomes a frictionless experience for the patient. It's also paperless, because once you get digital signatures with everything, there's nothing you have to keep paperwork wise. Everything is stored in the system for that actual care plan. It's very, very, very user friendly. Also, let me just kind of quickly mention, when it comes to frictionless payments, what we're talking about here, whether it's swiping a payment, whether it's using terminals, whether it's mobile payments, whether it's online payments where you have someone make a payment to you online, or their payment declined and you need to have them reprocess that payment online, whether you want automated payments, digital signatures, all of this stuff is part of the system. And I'm just kind of briefly mentioning it, that when you use our system, the auto debit system, for frictionless payments, you can do all of this stuff. Stored billing on file, where you're storing their credit card or their bank account on file. Although I don't mention it here, you can see we could do cash, check, gift cards, all kinds of things in this, where, gift cards is a phenomenal way of building the practice. Stored signatures on file. What this is this is for you offices that are still going to have people paying one visit at a time, or you might have a patient who's paying one visit at a time. Or maybe it's just for miscellaneous services, like maybe a massage or when they buy supplements. You could have them have a signature on file that gives you the authorization to automatically charge their credit card for that one-time payment. So for this example, this person has they have a signature on file for up to $200 per transaction. And then in this case, they ran a $35 charge for, let's say, a bottle of vitamins. So in that case, the patient didn't have to stop at the desk and make the payment. The CA was able to do this automatically because the patient left a signature on file. That's an example of, again, making it more frictionless. Split payments. This is where you run one payment for a family. Let me repeat that. You're going to have mom, dad, and a child come in, and between the three of them, it's $50 for each of them. So you could either run the old school way of doing it, might be to run a separate $50 transaction for each of them, or you run a single payment of $150, but then you go into your EHR and you have to manually post $50 separately into each patient's account. Well, that's a pain in the butt, right? Well, with our system, you don't have to do any of that. You simply put in here, in this case, let's say we have three people, $60 for the first two and $50 for the third. It's going to charge a total of $170 as one payment, but it's going to automatically split that payment among the three family members and post it to the EHR, assuming you're using one of our integrated EHRs. So that saves you a tremendous amount of time when it comes to your family plans. Not only can you do that for your one-time payments, but for your recurring auto debits. If you have a recurring auto debit for a family, and again, the same thing, maybe it's 50, 50, and 50 for three different people in that family, or maybe it's 100, 100, and 100. It'll charge the $300 and split it as 100 each of them going into their patient ledgers appropriately in your EHR. It saves a tremendous amount of work for staff and CAs in that. Do you want to comment about that, Holly?
I do, because this is one of my most favorite parts, because collecting money, number one, can be awkward. Number two, you can have staff that suck at collecting money. You're constantly chasing down declined payments or people who owe money. But when you have a frictionless payment system in place, it frees up so much time, because I could literally say to a patient, Hey, John, good to see you. Today it's going to be $60. I'll charge your card on file and email the receipt to you. Have a great day, or let's schedule your next appointment or whatever needs to take place, because the payment is on file, the signature is on file. Like, it just makes it so easy for collections
Absolutely.
to be increased and for no awkward financial conversations to take place.
Absolutely. And the question just came in, can this be done with a staffless practice? The answer is 100% yes. In fact, I know of two coaches that teach staffless practices, right? There's Dr. Margie Smith, who teaches the micro practice, and there's Dr. Jody Dinnerman, who has a company called Staffless Practice, right? Both of them teach the idea of how do you run a practice with no staff. Both of them are big advocates of using cash practice.
They use? Yeah.
Yeah, huge advocates of using this as part of running that staffless practice. So the answer is yes, 100% this can be done without. In fact, it makes your life so much easier. Okay, it makes it so much easier. Okay, so now let's move on to frequent contact. The last of the four, right? The last of the four is frequent contact, which is you're going to be in regular contact with your patients. So we have a system for doing that with emails right now, where you can send either one-time emails or you can send campaigns of emails that educate your patients. That's what we advocate, is that your patients are routinely getting emails from you on, educational content, whether it be something like this, which is more of an announcement or a kind of an alert, a message of something, or it's more patient education oriented. But the point is that they're hearing from you frequently, and our drip ed system comes pre-built with the content for you. You can create your own content, don't get me wrong, but it comes pre-made, a library of pre-made chiropractic content. So you can literally start using it day one with your patients to educate them. It also has things in there like birthday cards and other fun stuff in there as well to send to your patients, besides just simply, patient education. But it's a pre-built system. If you're familiar with Constant Contact or MailChimp or Infusionsoft or any of those types of products, similar concept. It sends out regular content for you, except ours comes with a library pre-built for you, included for you as a chiropractor. So I shared with you the loyal patient journey. Those four systems of the drip education system for frequent contact, the auto debit system for frictionless payments, the care plan calculator for forecasting care, and the wellness score for feedback, those four systems are what we do throughout the journey. Now, when someone becomes a member of Cash Practice, we actually mail you a poster, an actual nice laminated poster of this journey to put up in your office, in your back office, for you to train with, so that you and your team know what you're doing and you use it as a training tool. But I want to give you all a copy of it for free, a way you can just download it yourself so you have it. It's a high resolution format, so you can look at it in large, so you can read everything and learn from it. Simply go to events.loyalpatients.com. And you'll see actually the picture there shows that there's a QR code if you want to scan it with your phone as well. But you'll see there on the left, it actually shows a web page with it. I encourage you to spend some time on the web page after you download the loyal patient journey, because it's an interactive page, and the interactive page actually lets you learn more than the poster. For example, you can click on each of the dangers. You'll see on this image here, the danger. You can click on them, and then it'll show you what is the danger and teach you about it and how you overcome it. You can click on this. Inside here, there's also videos you could watch, videos of me and Holly explaining what's going on in that step of the journey. So you use it as a training tool. There's no cost for it. Feel free to use it, enjoy it. We provide it for you to learn and be educated on how you execute the loyal patient journey. If you want to utilize our systems, after you download the ebook, it'll give you an opportunity, if you would like, no requirements here, of course, but if you'd like to schedule a time to learn more about the systems, just book a time. It'll actually give you a calendar where you can book some time. And I believe it's a calendar, right, Holly? Or is it a request? Do you remember?
No, it's a calendar.
It's a calendar, so you can book
and you choose the date and time that. And I encourage you, doctors and CAs who are on, book this as a team meeting, because you guys are going to implement this together. Because whether you're a staffless practice or you have a practice with team members, you guys are all involved. And the loyal patient journey actually shows, is a DC or CA responsible for this on which step and what are they doing? So it clearly outlines what everybody's responsible for, because it is a team effort. Like Dr. Bodzin, there's no way you could successfully take the patient through their health journey without the support of your CAs. Like I'm sure you could have done it on your own.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Do, but in our
is absolute team effort. So once you download the ebook, I encourage you to take a moment, book a time to speak with one of our loyal patient experts. They will show you, they'll answer your questions. They'll show you how the software works. If you decide you want to take an opportunity to use it, I'll let you know. You could use our program for starting as little as $49 a month as a monthly subscription. It's month to month. There's no long-term commitments. It literally will revolutionize the way you do things. And if you find out it's not for you, then it's not for you, and you move on. So with that being said, Holly, any parting words? I want to be respectful of people's time. Look at we're
going to go
right
ahead
on
and
time.
wrap up here. I know we're at a lot of people's lunch hours. We appreciate you guys showing up today and interacting with us to learn the 4 secrets of patient retention. We hope you have fun with the loyal patient journey. Spend some time on that page. There's a lot of great information, and be sure to click on the danger zones, because in those 11 steps, you'll discover there's certain points where patients will drop out of care. As Dr. Bodzin said earlier, whether the insurance ran out, or they have a new purchase decision to make, or they're feeling better, all of those reasons come into play throughout the course of care. And so click on those danger zones, interact with events.loyalpatients.com, and download the ebook. Book a demo if you want more information, but we're really grateful to present to you today. So with that said, we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Before we say goodbye, I want to say one thing. Burton, I know who you are. I know you, Dr. Burton. Thank you so much for the nice comment. He said in the chat, the entire system is in all caps, awesome. And I appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that with the team or in the audience. And we look forward to seeing you guys. And we hope to be of service to you guys. You guys have a great one.
Bye-bye.